What was the treatment of captive women by Native Indians, and what was their attitude towards them throughout history? Here are some of the most shocking facts regarding their behavior toward captive women. In the early days of America, the interactions between colonizers and local Indian tribes were marked by brutality and bloodshed. It's important to note that prisoners were taken on both sides during these conflicts. However, what's particularly intriguing is the way Native Indians treated their captive women. Fact number 1. When raids occurred, Indian tribes would often take children's lives immediately. But if the children survived and were captured as prisoners of war, they could be raised as full members of the tribe. The fate of men was different, with some facing a painful death and others being taken as prisoners. One well-known example is Alvar Nunes Cabeza de Vaca and his companions, who were captured in what is now Texas. As they had medical knowledge, they gained influence and lived relatively comfortably during their captivity. They were allowed to move freely and earned respect from their captors. Fact number 2. Now let's talk about the fate of captive women, which is both surprising and intriguing. Surprisingly, they were generally treated with respect. Young girls who hadn't grown up were especially valued and often became full members of their new tribes. For example, Cynthia Ann Parker was captured as a child, but eventually became a full member of her tribe. She even married a Comanche chief and became the mother of the last military tribal chief, Joanna Parker. Similarly, Millie Durgan, another kidnapped girl, grew up in captivity and married a warrior from the Kiowa tribe. She lived happily with him until old age. These examples show how captive women could rise to important positions within the tribes. Fact number 3. While some captive women adapted to their new lives, not all were happy about their captivity. Some wanted revenge on their captors and fought against their situation. For instance, there's a story of Matilda Lockhart, a 13-year-old girl who was captured by the Comanches in 1840. She wanted to get back at them for their cruelty. Once during a meeting with the Indians, she started a fight, revealing that the Comanches had other captives. Matilda's brave action resulted in the freedom of many captives. Fact number 4. Violence against captive girls and women was generally not tolerated by Native Americans. Their moral code prohibited such actions against individuals of the weaker gender. In situations where captives didn't desire to remain within the tribe or marry a warrior, they had the possibility of waiting for a ransom. Women were highly valued by the Indians and were sometimes viewed as a lucrative business opportunity. Special agents actively searched for captives, negotiated their release from the Indians, and then sold them back to their grieving family members. Furthermore, if a captive chose to join a tribe, she had the freedom to make that decision. Fact number 5. The journey of captive women is exemplified by the tragic story of Olive and Mary Ann Oatman, who were held captive during the so-called Oatman Massacre. They were captured by the Yavapai tribe after their family was attacked, and they endured terrible conditions as captives. They were treated as slaves, facing physical punishment, humiliation, and mockery. But their fate took an unexpected turn when the Mojave Indians noticed them. The Mojave Indians paid a ransom to free Olive and Mary Ann from their captors and showed them kindness and care. The chief and his wife even adopted the sisters as their own daughters. Living with the Mojave tribe, Olive and Mary Ann experienced a significant improvement in their lives. They were no longer forced to work and were fully accepted as part of the tribe. Olive later expressed that the Mojave treated them better than their own people. Fact number 6. Unfortunately, not all captive women had happy endings like Olive and Mary Ann. Some had a difficult time after being rescued or returned to their families. They faced problems with their captors, who saw them as traitors, and with their families, who saw them as tainted. One example is Mary Jemison. She was taken by Seneca Indians when she was 15 and stayed with them, marrying twice and having 8 children. Even though she chose to stay with her Seneca family, she faced hostility from some members of the tribe. Another example is Rachel Plummer. She was captured by Comanches at 17 and suffered terrible abuse, including the death of her son. She was eventually ransomed by her father, but she couldn't recover from the trauma and died 2 years later. These stories show how complex and diverse the experiences of captive women were. They challenge the stereotypes and myths that surround them. They reveal the human side of a brutal and fascinating chapter in American history. Thank you all for watching this video with us, and don't forget to leave a comment down below and let us know what you think about this topic. See you next time!